SEMA Games presents a new tabletop fantasy football game. Fantasy Football, Draft, Deals, and Dice. This is an overview of the game's core mechanics, including the injuries, hot streaks, and defensive matchups that come up during the game. At the start of each game, all players in the game will receive a random skill rating and upside rating. The player skill rating is a constant value that sets the baseline for determining the player's total points scored each week. The player's upside rating combines with the skill rating to determine the player's expected performance each week. The player's weekly score would be determined by starting with 15 points, then adding the value of 5 offensive dice and subtracting the value of 3 defensive dice. The number of dice rolled by each player can change throughout the season, especially during the player's primetime matchup. During the primetime matchup, the player will double any dice in that week's column. There are also events that happen during the season that can change the player's expected upside rating. For example, the player might go on a hot streak, which removes all defensive dice from the top upside row. Or the player might get injured and lose all offensive dice on the top upside row. The teams will also be facing good and bad defenses that change each week. When the player faces a good matchup, the player removes all defensive dice in the bottom upside row. Against a bad matchup, the player would remove all offensive dice in the bottom upside row. The player may also experience a hot streak or injury while also facing a good or bad defense. This situation would impact both rows differently and could create a wide degree of variance in the player's potential during the season. If the player is lucky enough to go on a hot streak and face a bad defense, the player removes all but one of their defensive dice. If the player is injured and facing a bad matchup, they would remove all but one of their offensive dice. The owner who can best assess and adapt to the changing player landscape each week will become the FF3D champion. Fantasy Football, Draft, Deals, and Dice.